incendiary policies and rhetoric. And White House economic advisors see few options for reversing course should the economy start to slip. Jonathan adds, though Trump has expressed private worries about Wall Street, he is also skeptical about some of the weaker economic indicators, wondering if the media and establishment figures are manipulating the data to make him look bad. Trump's skepticism has been reinforced by White House officials who have long been inclined to only show him rosier economic assessments. The New York Times reiterates that view, writing, Trump has repeated the claims in private discussions with aides and allies, insisting that his critics are trying to take away what he sees as his calling card for re-election. Trump has been agitated in discussions about the economy and by the news media's reporting of warnings of a possible recession. The Times adds, Trump has said forces that do not want him to win have been overstating the damage his trade war has caused. And several aides agree with him that the news media is overplaying the economic fears, adding to his feeling of being justified. Joe, the question I have for you is the challenge for
country teetering on the brink of civil war. So many different factions still at play. The wedding hall bomber detonated his explosives in the middle of the wedding on Saturday evening, where 1,500 people had gathered. He walked up to a stage at the front of the hall where children and adults were dancing and clapping and blew himself up. ISIS soon claimed responsibility, saying they had targeted minority Shiites whom it views as deserving of death. The attack is a reminder that ISIS in Afghanistan are a major force, and both the US and the Taliban condemned this attack against civilians. At least 63 were killed, including 23 children, and 200 injured. Both the bride and the groom survived, but have said their lives were devastated. As peace talks between the Taliban and the US continued, and are believed to be close to reaching an agreement, many outraged Afghans asked whether or not a deal with the US to end nearly 18 years of fighting will actually bring any peace to long-suffering Afghan civilians, or whether it will lead to further conflict. President Ashraf Ghani, who is openly frustrated at being sidelined from US peace talks, insists that the Taliban are just as much to blame for the wedding attack, saying that they had created the platform for terrorists with their own brutal assaults on schools, mosques, and other public places over the years. And we've seen fresh violence today, a series of bombs in the eastern city of Jalalabad, killing and wounding up to 100 people. It is a reminder that this country is incredibly splintered as the US and the Taliban try to find a way forward.
Absolutely. More on that coming up. Benjamin Hall, thank you.
And in a matter of hours, we will hear after Israel's decision to prevent at least one of them from entering that country, a decision Israel ultimately rescinded. Meanwhile, we are now learning senior Democrats are weighing action against Israeli diplomats. Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin says that move would be a mistake.
It would be a huge strategic mistake on their part. It's wrong on the merits. It's bad politics. These two members they were claiming to be representatives of the U.S. government, but they were seeking to undercut U.S. foreign policy and not represent our actual stance as a government.
Garrett Tenney is live in Washington with more. Garrett.
Well, John, this confrontation is not going away, and now that some members of Congress are looking at taking action, it may even just be the beginning. According to McClatchy, about a dozen House Democrats are considering a number of actions in response to Israel blocking Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar from visiting. Among those options reportedly being discussed is issuing a statement of no confidence in Israel's ambassador to the U.S., Ron Dermer, and opening an Inspector General investigation into the U.S.'s ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, to determine if he had any role in Israel's decision to block Tlaib and Omar from making their trip. President Trump weighed in on the possible Democratic action last night, tweeting in part, House Democrats want to take action against Israel because it is fighting back against 2, maybe 4 people that have said unthinkably bad things about it and the Israeli people. Dems have such disdain for Israel. What happened? A whole host of 2020 candidates are weighing in on this as well, including Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who stopped short of endorsing any kind of legislative action against Israel on ABC's This Week.
I think our obligation as an ally and as a friend is to hold them accountable when they're wrong. And I think anytime you're undermining basic free speech rights and human rights, you're going in the wrong direction.
A handful of Republican lawmakers have also criticized Israel for blocking the trip, but you also have other GOP lawmakers and Democrats who have argued that Tlaib and Omar's support for the international boycott movement against Israel is dangerous for both the U.S. and Israel. In terms of legislative action, Tlaib and Omar are expected to discuss that this afternoon at their press conference, though it is not clear how much support there is from leadership or the rank and file members for any kind of action at this point, John.
All right, Garrett Tenney from Washington. Thank you, Garrett.
Now to the north, leave the area.
Well, a tense situation as far right and far left hold dueling protests in Portland over the weekend. So how did things turn out? We're going to be speaking with a former member of Antifa, Gabriel Nadales. He will be joining us next.
Once you get into Antifa, you realize how hateful and violent they are. You realize that they're not standing for something. They're not fighting fascism. They are the real fascists.
Police did an exemplary job of de-escalating the situation, keeping the extremists on both sides separated for the most part, and preventing people who wanted to engage in acts of violence from confronting each other.
That's Portland's mayor praising police for keeping protests peaceful over the weekend. Far-right groups and far-left members of Antifa held dueling demonstrations in that city on Saturday. Gabriel Nadales is a field coordinator for the Leadership Institute and also a former member of Antifa. Gabriel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
What do you think about what the Portland mayor had to say there?
Well, it's obvious that he's in damage control. It's all a PR stunt to him. I like how he said that for the most part. Well, for the most part, let's look at what the most part is. If you look at those examples, there were Antifa members trying to pull people out of a bus to try to beat them up. And then there was another incident where this gentleman, who allegedly was not there for any political purposes, he was just trying to take pictures, they were harassing him, throwing things at him, and they threw his American flag on the floor. And this is just what Antifa is. Antifa is not for something. They're against anything that they don't like.
Andy Ngo, who is the conservative journalist who's had his own run-ins with Antifa in the past, said this on Fox and Friends this morning about that whole incident.
And I know the mayor described the events as peaceful, but I mean, his metric is basically looking to see if anybody was killed. Nobody was killed, but there were a lot of people who were injured, maced, beaten, mobbed. I mean, there were Antifa people who had come prepared with slabs of concrete. A lot of damage can happen before somebody's killed.
So if you're setting the bar at, nobody being killed, and that makes a successful police action, I suppose that's a pretty low bar.
It is a low bar. Unfortunately, we have to be more proactive about fighting against Antifa. Antifa shows you that they don't care if there's police there. Remember, there was 1,000 officers there, 1,000 officers, and they couldn't contain Antifa. It just shows you that we need action at the federal level. We need to classify Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization.
Well, the president has said that he's doing that. Let me read you a tweet from the president. He says, major consideration is being given to naming Antifa an organization of terror. Portland is being watched very closely. Hopefully the mayor will be able to properly do his job. Did the mayor get the job done, do you think?
Honestly, no. He definitely, on Friday, I was praising him, saying that he was actually taking Antifa seriously, but it shows you that Antifa is a bigger threat than for one city to handle. And we really need action at the federal level.
Well, you're a former member. You joined the group, back in 2010. Why?
Well, Antifa sounds good. Antifa stands for anti-fascism, and I joined thinking I was going to be doing something good. Unfortunately, once you get into Antifa and you start realizing that what they're doing is not right, they're trying to hurt people. They're trying to harass people. And the reason I left Antifa was because I started asking questions, and as soon as I asked questions, they started harassing me. Meanwhile, the reason I became a conservative is because I met someone from the Leadership Institute who, when I asked questions, instead of him harassing me, he would just be really interested and just, respond to them. And thankfully, I now work for the Leadership Institute, and my job is to help conservative students around the country and help them how to defend themselves against Antifa and against liberal bias on college campuses.
When you look at some of the video from this, Portland riot and from others, it seems like Antifa just becomes their license for thuggery.
Yeah, when you hide behind a black mask, it just makes you, it gets you part of this mob mentality. Unfortunately, this is not going to stop unless we take Antifa seriously and we declare domestic terrorist organization.
Warren seeing a surge in the polls, but an old controversy continues to haunt her on the campaign trail. The 2020 Democratic hopeful apologizing again to Native Americans for her previous Cherokee heritage claims.
Like anyone who's been honest with themselves, I know that I have made mistakes. I am sorry for harm I have caused. I have listened and I have learned a lot, and I am grateful for the many conversations that we've had together. It is a great honor to be able to partner with Indian country, and that's what I've tried to do as a senator, and that's what I promise I